In this video, we are going to do a general assembly project that's going to help you regardless of what piece of furniture you're putting together. This is a shoe bench, and it has a hinged lid to it. It has a couple of doors to it. So a lot of different assembly techniques are going to be used in this one. The reason that I'm saying you can utilize this regardless of your build is it has a lot of things in it that you will run across almost independent of what brand you're putting together and how big or small the project is. Because if you can learn some of the things that we're going to do here, every project becomes easier and easier. The reason I picked this one is because it has terrible instructions. This is it. It's one sheet. It's not even front and back. It's just the front with no written instructions, just really average pictures. And when I say average, you're going to see what I mean in just a little bit. You have to be somewhat of a detective to figure out how these things work. Now, let me show you what this came with, because it did come with a tool. Here we go. This is a little hollow handle and a screwdriver that you can fit into the handle. I guess if you have nothing else, you can use this, but I'm going to tell you it's going to drive you crazy because it's so small, it's hard to hold on to. You'll probably get a callus in your hand, depending how long the project is. You might strip out the end of the screwdriver. So if you have nothing else, go ahead and use it. Otherwise, throw it away. And just get yourself, it doesn't have to be a top of the line screwdriver, but a really nice screwdriver. You can see this is a Stanley. It's much nicer. It's so nice and big. The handle fits your hand really nice. It's a soft rubber. It's got a good contour. It has a slotted and a Phillips screwdriver. I'm going to use this because it's just going to make the job go so much more quickly, and I'm not going to get as fatigued on my hand, my forearm, and the palm of the hand won't get calloused. So let's get started. First thing you want to do is make sure that you have all of the parts. As we look at the parts list, it tells you how many you should have of each. For example, this first piece says one piece. How do you know out of all these pieces which one that is? This is where you have to become a little bit of a detective. For example, this particular piece has 2 holes in it. So I know that matches up with that part there that has 2 holes. So go through the entire kit that you received and make sure everything is here, especially the hardware. Sometimes it's hard to tell all these pieces, so you just kind of have to look at how many of each piece there's supposed to be, and if nothing else, see if you have the right number of identical pieces. Be warned, when you're opening up the box, there's going to be little pieces of styrofoam everywhere. I've never had that not be the case. So I always have a little hand vac when I'm unpacking, and I have a damp cloth, not a wet cloth, a damp cloth, because this is fiberboard, and sometimes if it gets too wet, it could cause some problems. But I wipe them down and vacuum them off as I'm taking them out of the box, and I get that box out of the house as quickly as possible. That way it's just a cleaner build. So the first assembly calls for part A, B, and C. So it seems pretty straightforward. I know this is A because it has 2 holes. I know this is B because it is the piece that's long and rectangle. I can identify that piece with the scallop. That's pretty easy. The question is, does A go here, or does it go over here? You might think, well, it doesn't make a difference, but it does, because you see in the back there's a slot, and if we put this in wrong, everything's going to be backwards, and the instructions don't tell you where it should go. So what we have to do is go a few steps ahead, and what you can see in this picture is that we're sliding the back in place, which means the slot has to be below the plain rectangular piece, which is piece B. Since my slot is back here, piece B has to go there. It also doesn't tell you how it connects. This is where putting projects together like this, after a while you get used to the hardware. So what we're going to do is screw this into the flat piece, the base, and then this piece goes into that right there. And when they go together, that fits in. You give this a turn with the screwdriver and it'll tighten them down. There was a little piece of plastic there and you want to take that off, cut it away or pick it away because you want to make sure that this lies flat. So on that piece, you're going to see an arrow. Let me take it out, if I can get it out now. But that can spin around and round. Okay? And you want to make sure that the little arrow that's on there is pointing down. Otherwise, that hole won't line up. So you put that on like that, and then we give that a turn, and now that's tight. That's all there is to it. Very common fastening device that you're going to find when you put these types of projects together. I'm going to do that same thing on this piece right here. Put that in with the arrow pointing down. You probably can't see that, but the arrow is pointing down, little arrow on there. And then put that on. Now tighten it up. So this piece is done. This wiggles a little bit, but I'm not worried about it because when we screw the sides on, that will tighten it up. Now the next instruction says I'm supposed to put this end on here and screw it into the top, the middle shelf, and the bottom. There's two pieces that look almost alike. Which one do I put there? Well, I know this is wrong because this has a groove and that has a groove and they aren't lining up. So if I put that in, and you can see those grooves line up, so that's going to be, when the back piece slides in, it'll notch in very cleanly there. So I'm going to line up the other two pieces, and then we'll put screws in from the far end. Now I like to put all the screws in very loosely before I tighten everything down to make sure it's all lined up. So I'm going to put these screws in first to get that top shelf lined up, and then I'm going to line up the second shelf. Okay, so I have all of those screws started. I'll tighten those up, and then we're going to move down to this end. One step at a time. You have to make sure everything fits. I think that's a pretty important pointer. These pieces, although they're cheaply made, they can look really good and be really strong if you take your time putting them together. Sometimes the holes don't line up perfectly, so always loose fit them and slowly go around the whole thing. I have 5 screws or 4 screws there. So I'm not going to tighten one down and then tighten the next 3. I'm going to move around them in a pattern, tightening, 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 maybe adjust a little bit, move it so it's lined up just the way I wanted. Then I tighten it down and you'll be really happy with the results. Also be very careful. These are really coarse threads, and the fiberboard these are made out of can be stripped very easily. Be careful how tight you make this. Make it so it's snug and no tighter. If it's wobbly, tighten a little bit, but don't go overboard or you could strip out the hole that this is made out of. And then there's solutions, but it's going to be kind of tricky to solve that problem. All right, now I'm going to put the bottom shelf in. Be careful, because once again there's a slot. We want to make sure that that lines up with that slot. So when we put the back in, it fits. I could flip this whole thing over and the slot would be on this front edge, and that would not work at all. All right, here's something really weird. The instructions clearly show that the center shelf should be in place when that end is being assembled. And yet it doesn't have to. Not only that, it can't, because there are no holes here. This is an adjustable shelf, and it's used with these little gadgets. These just slide in, and you see that there are 3 different holes there, and you can adjust the position of this shelf. The shelf is just going to rest on there later. Okay, now we have a decision to make. It's time to slide the back in place, and that's why we had those slits in there. So we have to decide, do we want this to look white when we're looking in the cabinet, or do we want it to look white when you're looking outside the cabinet? Because it's only white on one side. Now in my case, this is going to be pushed up against the wall, so I don't care what the back of it looks like. So I'm going to slide this so the white is on the inside, which I think is probably the way it's designed, but it's your piece of furniture. You can make that decision. If you don't care what the inside looks like and you would rather have it look pretty from the outside, go ahead and slide this piece in that way, and then when you're looking at it from the back, it'll look nice and white. So we're just going to slide this in like a drawer, and it'll fit nice and neat. Now I'm going to put this end in just like I did the other side. All right, you can see all these screws are loose fit, so I know that they are all going to line up. Time to just tighten them all down. Okay, I want to show you something. The back, as I was tightening, it popped out of this groove here, which is one of the reasons why you don't want to tighten everything down at once. You can see there's still a gap there, so I can pop that right back into place. But be really careful, because if I would have tightened that down, I could have risked splitting something, cracking something, or at the very least have to disassemble it when I was all done. So there it is. The main box is put together, and there is that dark back that I showed you. I don't care, because for the most part, I'm going to be looking at it from that direction. And I want that to look nice and clean and bright when I look at the inside. So now it's time to put on the doors. They don't really explain how, so let's explain. It looks like they all have the same type of hinges. You can see this big piece of the hinge, kind of square looking, that's going to fit into the hole. And these 2 holes should line right up. And these other 4 holes are going to attach to the door. These 2 you don't have to worry about too much. Those are just adjustments. They're going to be there so you can adjust the door, and if it looks like it's not hanging straight, we will adjust it. So we're going to put the hinge right in there, and you can see there are pre-drilled holes. We'll tighten them up with these little screws. We'll do that with all 4 hinges. And by the way, the lid uses the exact same hinges. So we'll be doing this 6 times. Just set it in there and screw them on. So now the hinges are in place. All we need to do is screw them on. There is no trick, there is no secret. There are 4 pre-drilled holes, and you just screw them on. We can make adjustments later. You can see that these back holes are slotted, so you might be able to make a little adjustment there, and we'll also be able to make in and out adjustments with these. So we'll be able to make these go up and down, in and out. Okay, I made a mistake. Can you catch it? These are 2 different types of hinges. So I thought all 6 hinges were alike, but these 2 are the lid hinges, and these are door hinges. So I'm going to have to take this out. If I would close this, I'd probably break the door because this hinge wouldn't close. So you got to look real carefully. It's the profile. See how that is recessed and that one's straight? They're 2 different kinds of hinges. So this I have to take out and replace with the other hinge. Look at these terrible instructions. Can you even see what that is? It just looks like a big blob there. I can't make anything out. Also, nowhere in here do they talk about putting the feet on. I don't even think the feet are in the assembly guide of things that you're supposed to have. Terrible. Now we're going to put the lid on. It's the same way. It doesn't look like there's anything in there, but there's a hole in there. Oh, can you hear that thunder outside? So we're just going to pop that in, and we're going to screw that hinge in place. Notice it's the right one this time. And then we will attach it to the cabinet. Now what should happen if you would tighten this down too much and you were to strip out that fiberboard? Well, there is a solution, a toothpick. If you have a little bit of wood glue, it works even better. What you do is spread wood glue around this toothpick, insert it into the hole, and break it off. Just like this. Put it in there, and then snap it off. And what happens, that adds a little more thickness, a little more wood, and when you put the screw in there, it has something to bite onto, and it's going to hold. That's all it takes. A little toothpick, and you can fix a stripped hole. Now I didn't strip this, but if I did, that's how we could fix it. Okay, so this is binding just a little bit on this side. So what I'm going to do is loosen those up and loosen the bottom ones there. Those are slotted, and then I'll be able to slide it over just a little bit. It's done, except for the bells and whistles. I do need to clean it out a little bit. There's some sawdust in there. But the main things I need to do is put these poles on there. I'm going to put the center shelf in, and I'm going to turn it upside down and put the feet on. So let's get going. Okay, let's talk about the feet. It came with this bag of feet and a little plastic, I don't know, they're maybe a ½ inch thick, with a hole right down the center, and there's no guide hole to use these with, so I guess I would have to drill my own. They also came with these felt stick-on pads, and they're kind of that size, so I suppose that you could then stick the felt. I'm guessing it wouldn't stick really well to plastic because plastic's petroleum based, and a lot of times the stuff doesn't adhere to it. I am not really happy with it. I could put this on. What I would have to do is position them, then I would have to mark it with an awl or something where the hole went, and then drill a pilot hole. But I have something else I'm going to try, and that's these. They're rubber pads. They are adhesive. I just said that adhesive doesn't stick well to plastic, but I think this surface is going to do a little better. And these are rubber, they're not felt. So when I sit down, the thing's not going to slide across my tile floor. So I think I'm going to put 6 of these, 1 in each corner, and then 1 on each side in the middle. And I think this will work just fine. It's going to take away about maybe a ¼ inch of height, but there were no instructions for the feet on that anyway, so that's what I'm going to use. I think I've got at least 6 in here. I'll link these down below so you can get them yourself if you want to. But that's another thing about these kits. Sometimes you have to add your own thing in the some assembly required or complete assembly required. So it's nice to know about all these little extras that you can purchase aftermarket or, you know, go down to the hardware store. So there we go. We have the 6 rubber feet in place. These instructions, they stink. Remember when I told you that you didn't have to put that shelf in? Well, I was half right. You do something long enough, you think you've seen everything. That's the first time I've seen an adjustable shelf that you can't remove. Yes, it's adjustable in that it can move up and down a little bit, but before you put that end cap on, well, that's not true. They said you had to put it on before the end cap. If you did that, it could still slide out and fall out. But you do have to put it in before you put the doors in, because once you put the doors on, that adjustable shelf is not going to fit in. The opening's too small. So I had to take the doors off both doors. One wasn't enough. Had to take both doors off just to get the adjustable shelf in. So no matter how long you do this, you can still make some mistakes. That's why you watch a video like this before you tackle it for yourself. Yeah, I wish I was aware of that. I guess you could say follow the directions, but the directions just didn't make any sense. So I hope you liked what you saw. If so, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe. Really, you're going to find these same techniques used over and over and over again. If you can put some, I would say that this is on a scale of 1 to 10 for difficulty, I would say probably a 3 or a 4. It's not hard to put together, but the instructions are so poor that brings it up one number from maybe a 2.5 to 3.5 to a 3 or 4. But anyway, I hope you learned something. I hope you feel comfortable tackling your own assembly project. As always, I encourage you to like and share the videos. Leave your comments down below. If you haven't already, please subscribe by clicking my face in the corner. And don't forget to ring that bell icon. That way you'll know when I post new videos. Thanks for watching. I'm Mark, and this is the Average Me Channel.